Well. Bet y'all thought we'd never get to this review. Of course, that's book 16 of the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Peace Talks. Let's finally talk about it. So, Peace Talks. Okay, so right after Skin Game, where, they go toe-to-toe with Hades in his vault, and they're taking all kinds of shit with Nicodemus, all that stuff happens. Murphy gets messed up. That bombastic ending to that book. You finally get to Peace Talks. So I don't remember exactly why this book was split. I know that Peace Talks and Battleground, I think, was just going to be too big. So I don't know if it was Butcher's decision or the publisher's decision to split it. But effectively, you get Peace Talks as like a preamble to Battleground. And it really is... First of all, I love it. I think it's a great standalone Dresden book. And while it's not one of the most epic ones or potentially as impactful as some other ones because of the nature of like why it exists, I understand some people's gripes with it and waiting for this book to come out and then it being what it is and still having to wait for Battleground. I get that. I didn't have to do that because I hadn't read this until last year, so I just kept going, and I really like Peace Talks. I thought it was a fantastic, not introduction, but sort of beginning to Battleground, sort of the calm before the storm. By the way, these are full spoiler reviews. This is book 16 of a series. So naturally, splitting this book into two, obviously Battleground, that is like the battle. That's the biggest, largest epic scale battle. We'll get to it. Peace Talks is leading up to it. What's happening? What's going on to get us to that point? So, of course, long story short, you have Marcone and all of these different factions, essentially, hosting Peace Talks to try to barter some sort of peace between the Fomor and the Accords, which of course right off the bat you're like, there's no way the Fomor are doing this in good faith. There's no way any of this is going to go over well. So right off the bat, up front in this novel, you learn that Justine is pregnant. And of course, that's like a huge what the fuck moment because, Thomas is a vampire. So Thomas and Justine having a kid, that doesn't bode well. The book very early on as well builds a ton of tension between Ebenezer and Harry because Ebenezer sees that Harry is kind of going to the dark side a little bit, like the whole Winter Night thing, dealing with the Fae, coercing with vampires. Ebenezer has some deep-seated hatred for these creatures and does not like them. So Harry dealing with them is just a massive no-no red flag for Ebenezer. And they just start going back and forth. And this is when, I don't remember if it was the first time or the second time in this book, I think it's the second one, where they get the gift that everybody uses, the Harry with the staff, like, I'm more than dumb enough. You get that fantastic moment, which I learned after reading this, that was from like a book preview trailer that I didn't know existed until the first time that I read these, which, by the way, I reread both of these the last couple of days to properly refresh my memory of these books. Because they're fantastic. There's a ton that happens. You're also dealing with the ramifications of Skin Game, where Rudolph and these other dipshit police officers are trying to bring Harry in for questioning. They're going after Harry and Murphy because of what happened in Skin Game. They think they're responsible for what happened at the bank, that they were, caught stealing, firing weapons, killing people, all this stuff. So you have that nagging nonsense at the beginning and plenty of foreshadowing to come. But you're dealing with all these different things. So, of course, you have Mab and Lyra meeting with Harry in the back of his car, and Mab is like, hey, look, you owe Lyra a great debt. The Winter Court owes her, and you have to do whatever she says. So anything she asks, you got to say yes. So, of course, that's great. They make their way to the embassy where the peace talks are going to be held. Shit's on fire. Things are going down. Maggie's inside, so Harry's freaking out. They quash that to figure out what's going on. And then you learn that Thomas apparently tried to assassinate Etchery. And immediately you're just like, this is so out of character. Like, did he go crazy? Did he go into some sort of like vampiric bloodlust that we didn't know about? Like, why would he do this? And when Harry finally gets to him, all he can kind of garner is that he's trying to say Justine. And so naturally Harry's like, oh my God, I have to protect Justine, of course. Like, she's pregnant. I got to keep her safe. Of course, which is a great little seed to plant at the beginning because we know what happens later. So that kind of kicks things off here. And you're dealing with, well, Thomas is going to be executed for this assassination attempt. And Lyra, of course, calls in her first favor of Harry, which is, you're going to help me get Thomas out. So right off the bat, there's so much setup and crazy shit happening right away. Just there's so many great character moments in this book, and lots of heavy focus on dialogue. You get touching moments with Harry and River Shoulders, who, if you didn't read the short stories, any of the Bigfoot stuff, like, you would have no idea who River Shoulders is. I'm glad that I read it because I was like, hey, it's River Shoulders. Because otherwise, Harry's just like, oh yeah, we've helped each other out a few times, and River Shoulders says that about Harry. So it's just kind of like a one-off. You wouldn't really, I don't think it would have hurt your experience with this book, but it's fun to know, like, the antics and sort of like journeys that happened prior to this novel with River Shoulders, who I didn't know existed until I read those, obviously. We also get some great moments with Harry and Molly. They sort of have a heart-to-heart. Tons of emotional beats in this book. They talk about the Carpenters and how she hasn't told her parents yet that she's the Winter Lady. And Harry's like, are you kidding me? Like, you have to tell them. You have to go home. You have to see them. Like, you're still their daughter. You owe it to them to do this. So there's a lot of, like, it's almost like that, like, father-daughter, really good friend, close family connection that they have until they get married, of course, later. Just kidding. Might happen. But there's these great, one-on-one moments throughout this entire book. You get a lot of build-up and emotional beats with Harry and Murphy, of course, which only sets up entirely too well for Battleground, where, Murphy really wants to fight. Harry knows that he can't keep her out of this fight, even though she has no business being in it. She's broken to hell because of Nicodemus. She cuts her cast off. She's like, all right, I'm good, let's go. And then Harry helps her into a bath because she can barely move. And they tell each other that they love each other. So it's like, oh, all this sweetness. So, of course, it's going to have to end. Because that's just how these things go, right? TV shows and movies have trained me that if something's too happy for a while, like, you just know something's going to happen. And this just seems like too much of a build-up at this point in the book. So, you have Harry and Murphy having, loving moments together. Harry finally learns that he is a Starborn. He's able to banish Outlanders, which is pretty sick because, of course, there's a lot of Outlanders on the way. So that's going to be a big factor to play in the rest of the series, I'm sure, just because of what's going on. He also summons Molly, which doesn't really make her happy, and kind of like has her locked in a circle. And he's like, like, you can't get out. You got to do what I want you to do, which is make an ectoplasm, like, phantasm or, like, image of him to come in use later. So we don't understand what's happening there just yet. But he basically hatches a plan to, as part of getting Thomas out, they're going to get him to Demon Reach, lock him away in some kind of cell until they can figure out what to do with his hunger and get him back into tip-top shape, and where he's not just a raging vampire, blood-sucking monster demon thing. So, of course, the plan takes off. You've got Lara and Harry and Freitas trying to get Thomas out. So they actually project this sort of image of Lara and Harry having sex, very, very out in the open, public, distracting kind of thing. And there you go, there's the image. So, of course, as they're escaping, King Korb of the Fomor shows up with none other than the Titan herself, Ethnu. So at this point, you're just like, what is happening? There's guards dead. These people just stormed into the peace talks. Of course this was going to happen because it wasn't going to be peaceful. And Marcona's like, how dare you, like, come to my peace talks and do this? And Mab tries to, flex on him, and Ethnu's like, be gone. Just kind of like flicks her out of the way and essentially just declares war on Chicago and humanity. Ethnu's like, look, you guys are bowing down to these mortals, like these pathetic creatures that can't hold a candle to the worst of us. Like, we should be in charge. They should be our slaves. We're going to kill everybody unless you follow me. And that just sets up perfectly for the battleground of Battleground, the next book. And of course, at the same time, which, good thing we learned that Harry is Starborn, because it's probably going to come in handy later, there's a massive Outsiders attack on sort of like the outer gates that are being held by the Fae. And if you recall, in previous books, Harry sort of does a tour of the land and sees that Outsiders are constantly attacking, and the Fae are there really protecting the world from the Outsiders. And so now that we have that background info and you see that there's an even bigger force coming, and now you have a literal Titan that can just swat Mab away like she's nothing, attacking with the Fomor, who you probably don't really know who the Fomor are unless you've read like Aftermath and some of the other short stories that follow Marcone and Murphy, where you learn that they're kind of like the bad guy brigade walking around town, just like kidnapping people and doing all kinds of shit. They are sort of like the big bad army now. And Ethnu is at the helm with Korb and some others. But it's really Ethnu and then just the cannon fodder, which is the Fomor army. So that is what's coming to Chicago to destroy it and everybody in it. And then if Chicago falls, if Harry and them fall, the rest of the world likely falls too. We then, of course, after all that's happening, Harry, Lara, Thomas, all that Murphy, they're getting away. They're going to Demon Reach. They're on the Water Beetle. And Ebenezer is like, look, this shit needs to stop. You cannot go with these monsters. I don't know what you're doing, Harry. Like, we can't have this. I thought I knew you more than that. And they just start going at it. And this is like the third confrontation between them in this book. And it's just the tension's been building and building and building. Finally to the point where I don't think you actually know it until right after it happens, but Harry basically projects himself into this construct that Molly built for him. And he's having this conversation with Ebenezer as like the construct. And he pisses Ebenezer off so badly to the point that Ebenezer is like, I can't have this happen. And like goes to shoot the water beetle down. And Harry like jumps in front of it, kind of like he gets in the way, and like Ebenezer shoots him through the chest and thinks that he basically killed him. And then Harry's just like, ha. And then you see that he's actually on the water beetle and they get safely away and Ebenezer's destroyed. And Murphy's just like, so what happened? He's like, oh, Ebenezer's pissed. I mean, it literally got to a point where he fucking like tried to kill Harry. And that's just a massive, like, how are we going to recover from this kind of moment? So they get to Demon Reach. Of course, Lara thinks this whole plan is some like 4D chess move from Harry to make her indebted to him by locking Thomas away and holding, a stranglehold over the Wraith family. And he's just like, what are you talking about? He's my brother. I'm trying to keep him safe, you idiot. I totally forgot to mention, of course, Ebenezer literally yeets Harry through the stomach because he finally, because he wouldn't stop, and he finally just breaks down and tells him about Thomas and that they're brothers. And Ebenezer, like, can't handle the fact that that's, like, a thing that happened, because that means like Harry's mom was with a vampire. Just like he can't handle it. So like there's just a horribly emotionally ruinous scene, and it's fucking great. And now you have like all this stuff happen. Like you kind of know that Harry's on his way out of the White Council. They're not going to be happy with him. Ebenezer is really not happy with what's going on. And Harry's kind of realizing, like, I am siding with a lot of bad people, aren't I? But it's very much a necessary evil for what's to come. And finally, Harry and Lara and everybody agrees, like, okay, we all got our issues with each other, but, like, some of us are family, some of us hate each other, but, like, we have to kill Ethnu because she's literally coming to Chicago to destroy everybody. So let's at least band together for a little bit and fight her. So the peace talks didn't really work out as planned, but you do have now a conglomerate of defenders of Chicago, of Harry, the vampires, Marcone and Guard and his people. You've got the White Council. You've got the werewolves. Everybody just gearing up for what is going to come in Battleground. And I can't wait to talk about that one in the next video because Battleground was so good. And I love the slow build up to it because I think the dialogue in this book is so well done. The little bits of sort of like tension and action that you get are fantastic. And these moments between Harry and Ebenezer knock it out of the park. They're so good. And then you have, the nicer, calm, emotional beats with him and Murphy and him and Molly, and just the familial ties between the Wraith family and Harry, and just, it's so good. I don't know why people hate on this book. It's not bad at all. Like, it's not the most eventful Dresden book, but I mean, give it a break. It's setting up for the most eventful Dresden book where crazy shit happens. So we'll talk about that next time. I'm glad I finally reviewed this. To Battleground we go.